Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Meepolis and this is Literally Graphic. And today I am putting out a second Black Created Comics TBR. Link in the cards to my first one. While I have finished all the books on my first TBR because I pre-film my reviews as far in advance as possible, thanks moody creative process and ADHD, the last 3 reviews of Bitterroot, Excellence, and Crazy and Ignatz won't be coming out until mid-October. I have another Rush Arc review to get out before the 15th, however, so I figured I would jump ahead and just make this video outlining the next 10 Black Created Comics that I'm going to read. Not a small booktuber, but if you haven't heard of Steph's Romance Book Talk, you really should check her channel out. As the title indicates, she really focuses on romance novels, and I cannot say how much I appreciate this focus on such a maligned genre enough. But yeah, Steph is a very hardworking Black booktuber who deserves lots of love. First up, That Arc! Black Heroes of the Wild West, featuring Stagecoach Mary, Bass Reeves, and Bob Lemmons by Jameis Otis Smith, is coming out on September 15th, and at least initially reminds me a lot of the Strange Fruit collections. We shall see if the comparison bears out. Obviously, I'm a big fan of using comics to highlight minority histories for schools. It has really helped me, at the very least, to deprogram the great men of history narratives that I have been taught and talk about how much agency the people looked over in mainstream history really had. Next up, I want to continue through the Aya series with the 3rd volume, Aya, The Secrets Come Out. I have definitely not read this one before, so I'm very excited to dive back into it. On what is sure to be a much more serious note, I also hope to tackle Angola Jenga, Kingdom of Runaway Slaves by Marcel de Salate. His work in Run For It, although a little too liberal with violence against women, was a look at slavery in Brazil that is very underrepresented in my life. But keeping things mixed up genre-wise, I also hope to tackle EXO, The Legend of Whale Williams Part 1 and 2 by the team over at Unique Studios, a superhero set in futuristic Africa by Africans. Quote, tricked into returning home to Lagoon City, Nigeria, following a 5-year absence, Whale embarks on a journey to investigate his father's mysterious disappearance. As he comes to understand the suit's powers, Whale realizes he must restore hope to his city by preventing catastrophic attacks from the sociopathic Oniku, leader of an extremist group called The Creed. Otherwise, in the superhero end of things, I am hoping to tackle the second complete collection of Black Panther by Christopher Priest. If you look back at my original TBR video, I listed the entire series right out of the start, but I have since then decided to just do 1 volume per TBR, as they are very long. And while they were showing up in my library's catalog digitally, it was glitching out every time I tried to place a hold. Apparently this collection also includes an issue of Deadpool, so that should be interesting. Moving on to another genre, namely mystery, I'm aiming to finally read Incognito Volume 1 by Matt Johnson. I had picked this volume up previously but never got around to reading it due to requesting far more books than I can ever read. Quote, in the early 20th century, when lynchings were commonplace in the American South, a few brave reporters, light-skinned African Americans, risked their lives to expose the truth. This undercover work was known as going incognito. Zane Pinchback's latest case hits close to home. His brother has been arrested for murder. Next up is Afrocentric by Juliana Jewel Smith, Mike Hampton, and Ronald Nelson. Quote, this unflinching visual and literary tour de force tackles the most pressing issues of the day, including racism, patriarchy, gentrification, police violence, and the housing crisis, with humor and biting satire. When gentrification strikes the neighborhood surrounding Ronald Reagan University, Naima Pepper recruits a group of disgruntled undergrads of color to launch the first and only anti-gentrification social networking site, mydiaspora.com. The motley crew is poised to fight back against expensive avocado toast, muted Prius cars, exorbitant rent, and cultural appropriation. Whether Naima and the gang are transforming social media, leading protests, fighting rent hikes, or working as racial translators, the students at Ronald Reagan University combine their technology savvy and Black millennials' sensibilities with their individual backgrounds, goals, and aspirations. Second to last, but certainly not least, I'm aiming to pick up Nat Turner by author-illustrator Kyle Baker. Learning about Nat Turner was part of one of the most important developments in my own understanding of enslavement in the Americas, namely that enslaved people were not passive objects, but actively fighting enslavement throughout history. An obvious statement now, but I certainly feel like my own history education in the States definitely encouraged me to see them as passive objects that white settlers acted upon. So I'm always interested in more that make these discoveries more accessible. Finally, the most NSFW title is Yes Roya by C. Spike Trotman and Emily Denish. I picked this volume up at TCAF 2019 after listening to the author's podcast Dirty Old Ladies with Amanda Lafreniere and Cal McDonald for a couple of years. I have already read this book once, but it's a very fast read and I really want to review it, even if the flip through will be hard to film in a YouTube friendly way. Lol. And that is that. 10 more Black created comic books across a couple of different genres and styles. As I have already mentioned in previous videos, I have tended to avoid TBRs because I have a really hard time sticking to them. But this kind of open-ended goals video has worked so far. It really seems like a good way to raise awareness about the richness of Black creators, and it's helping me figure out what books to prioritize on my TBR. Bio, keep reading, and resist white supremacy. And as always, Literally Graphic is recorded on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation. I live here because of British colonization, Indigenous genocide, and more geographically specific, Treaty 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase, which was finalized in 1805 between representatives of the Crown and certain Mississauga peoples. This treaty was a lie and has since been broken many times over. Saying so reflects only my own small steps towards knowing the truth and does nothing for reconciliation.